Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm in what might be one of the strangest theatres in Cornwall, and it's not even a theatre. This is Gwennap Pit, as it says here, just outside Redruth, a huge green bowl in the ground where preachers shouted, miners listened, and apparently the population of a small town used to squeeze into this small green space. Methodism and mining. Some reading material. And here's my friend John Wesley. And a big globe. And there's a sort of picture in there, if you can see it. That's somebody's impression of what it looked like. I don't know if it's quite that big. So, this is a small field that looks like someone tried to build a stadium out of turf. So let's find out why this giant grassy crater exists, who preached here, and whether it really held 32,000 people, because I have questions. What is Gwennap Pit? So first things first, what even is this place? It looks like some kind of purpose-built mini amphitheatre, but the original version almost certainly wasn't planned at all. The best guess is that this started life as a mining accident. The ground collapsed into old mine workings underneath, probably part of the cathedral mine or a similar early working. Essentially, Cornwall mined so hard the landscape fell in, as it sometimes does, and then someone said, actually that would make a great preaching spot. Today it's a perfect grassy bowl with ringed terraces, but originally it was just an irregular rough hollow created by subsidence in one of the richest mining districts in the world. To understand why this weird pit exists, you have to know what was going on around it. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the parish of Gwennap was known as the richest square mile in the old world because of the sheer amount of copper being dragged out of the ground. Surrounding mines like Consolidated, Poldice, Tresavine and others were part of a global mining powerhouse. Imagine this area full of engine houses, steam pumps, tramways, smoke and a constant thud of stamps crushing ore. All that mining meant miles of tunnels underground. When you dig enough of those and then abandon them, sometimes the surface changes shape with years of weather and it drops. That's the origin story of this place. Not a church architect, but gravity. This might be the only church in the world formed by an industrial accident, but as far as we know, nobody got hurt in the process. Let's move over to the podium. Here's where the story gets interesting. Enter John Wesley, the rock star preacher. Gwennap Pit is famous because of one man, John Wesley, the founder of Methodism and apparently a big fan of dramatic locations. Here's his standing area. Now, the Church of England didn't like the fact that Wesley was reducing their parishioners, so he wasn't allowed to preach in churches. Because of that, he shouted his sermons to people in market squares, farm buildings, and even open fields. His first sermon near here was in 1762. The story goes that it was so windy in the village of Gwennap that no one could hear him properly. Someone said, "There's a hollow nearby that might shelter us from the wind." They all walked about a mile and a half, 2 miles, and they ended up here in this natural amphitheatre. Wesley called it a round green hollow and described it as an amphitheatre. He preached here many times, depending on who you ask. 17 or 18 occasions between the 1760s and 1780s. Every time he came back, more people showed up. It became one of his favourite outdoor pulpits. Now for one of my favourite bits, the numbers. Wesley once claimed he preached here to 32,000 people. That's an entire small town, supposedly in a grass crater in 18th century Cornwall. Now, people who have actually measured the size of the pit reckon that if you really squeezed, you could fit around 1,800 people to 2,000 sitting on the terraces. Even if everyone stood and personal space was cancelled, 32,000 is, let's say, optimistic. And on top of that, Cornwall's entire population at the time was only 150,000. And a big chunk of that would have been small children. So either Wesley wildly overestimated, or every man, woman, child, farmer and random seagull in South Cornwall showed up here for church. Either way, it makes for a great story, and it shows how huge this place felt to the people at the time. And because of Wesley's superstar status, many people most likely did travel miles to see him, but maybe not 32,000 people. Originally, the pit wasn't this neat. It would have been rough, irregular, and a bit hazardous. After Wesley died in 1791, the local Methodists and mine captains decided to turn it into a proper, beautiful preaching place in his memory. Between about 1803 and 1806, local miners literally reshaped this hole into the amphitheatre you see today. They cut 12 or 13 grassy circular terraces, depending on how you count them, so people could sit in orderly rows going all the way around. Think of it as a DIY community stadium, built with shovels and a lot of faith. It reopened for preaching in 1807, and they still use it today for services, especially around Whitsun and in the summer. So this isn't just an old historical site. It's a living outdoor church for some that is still used centuries later. Because this is Cornwall, it didn't just stay as a preaching spot. There are stories that the pit, or at least the area at Gwennap, was used for Cornish wrestling tournaments. So imagine one week you've got Wesley thundering about heaven and hell, and another week you've got two blokes in singlets trying to throw each other on the ground for a prize. This was pretty much Cornwall in a nutshell at that time. Faith, hard work, and maybe a bit of wrestling on the side. And remember, most of the people filling these terraces were miners and their families. They worked ridiculous hours underground, then came here on their day off to sit on the grass and listen to a preacher talk for ages. No Netflix, no phones, just a man with a loud voice and a message. When you consider that almost every mining family had lost someone dear to them, there's no doubt that their religion offered them some kind of comfort. Well, what else can you say about it? The pit is open all year round and it's free to visit. You can usually walk in at any time, including outside normal attraction hours, as it's treated much like an open public space for quiet visiting and reflection. There's no ticketing or formal admission process. Donations to support upkeep are optional and usually invited via a box in the small centre when open. We'll wander back down here. The visitor centre and Busfield Chapel operate on a seasonal timetable. Typical patterns given by official and tourism sources are open from around late May, spring bank holiday, to late September. Within that season, opening is usually Monday to Saturday, roughly 10 till 16:30. We've had a bit of weather this morning. As soon as I got here, it started raining. And then I started filming, and then it started raining again. And now the sun's shining. But we're in Cornwall, what can you expect? That's Gwennap Pit, a natural accident turned spiritual amphitheatre in the heart of what was the richest square mile on earth. From collapsing mine workings to a perfectly shaped preaching bowl, from Wesley's slightly exaggerated crowd sizes to miners carving out these terraces by hand, this place is a brilliant mix of faith, industry, and a little bit of human drama. And wrestling. If you like this tour of Cornwall's strangest church in a crater, hit like, drop a comment with where you want to see next, and subscribe so you don't miss the next adventure. See you in the next one.